The number of the beast. The number of the beast. What do you suppose that is? I can hear everyone shouting, 666! But it isn't, is it? There is no scripture that states that this is 666. Revelation 13:18 is really quite specific. What is that number? That number has to align with many things, just from that one verse. It's the number of the beast. It's the number of his name, maybe. It's the number of a man, for sure. And it does indeed reflect 666. I can identify a single number that isn't 666. Yes, it reflects 666. But this number can be found in more places than just Revelation 13:18. Shall I show you? This list that you see currently, the first few are of Revelation 13:18. The rest, if you have an interest, let's have a look and see how it flows, eh? Because at the end of the day there, what we need is a little more clarity. And it's not as easy as you might think. So let's have a look. Revelation 13:18. Here is wisdom. Let he who hath understanding count the number of the beast. How are we going to count that number? Well, first things first, let's go back several thousand years to ancient China and the Lo Shu magic square, otherwise known as the divine turtle, otherwise known as the square pertaining to Saturn. From this square, we are able to derive 4 elements. Saturn is the god of time, and these numbers that we can derive are indeed the numbers of time, in accordance to Dr. John Dee, Dr. John Dee, and the Enochian language of angels. This can be proven. Of these 4 numbers of time, we have 7, 9, 11, and 13. We are aware of 9/11, more than. 713, surprisingly, represents 9/11 too. Because as a string, 713 is 23 by 31, which is the 9th and the 11th primes. So 9/11 can be reflected twice through these numbers. But there's way more. This is where really the magic starts. You've heard of the phrase, "a stitch in time saves 9." Well, we can apply that here. Whilst its meaning was something else entirely, it can be applied here. If we add 9 to 7, we have 16, and 16 has a core value of 7, 1 plus 6. What we're left with is the 3 primes, 7, 11, and 13. 7 is spirit, and always resides center. 7 is spiritual perfection, in accordance to the church. Correctly as well, it is spiritual perfection. So we have to place it center. Then we have 11, 7, and 13. And 11 reflects 13 because its prime is 31. So now we have a palindrome, a very important one. This palindrome is a composite of 2 primes, 317 and 13. They are the 66th and 6th primes. Well, that's not the all of it. The magic really does start through primes. So let's have a look, shall we? We need a bit of basis here. The first prime, as we understand it, is 2. But was there a time when the first prime was 1? In accordance to Dr. John Dee and the Enochian language of angels, in the calls or keys at the back of these works, 18 of them there are, and then another issue. But of those 18 calls or keys, the first few will indicate that the 4th, 5th and 6th, which are the diagonal on the square of Saturn, 7, 11 and 13, the true numbers of time as he describes. Which means, well, he also describes this to be in the second beginnings of things, which does imply there was a first. So I just applied the notion. That's all I did. The prime factors of 31713 are 3, 11 and 31 squared. So the factors themselves are 3, 11 and 31, and they can be arranged in a variety of ways, but this particular way, 3, 13 and 11, provide a string, a 5-digit string. This is important because when the first prime is 1, the 66th prime is 313 and the 6th is 11. So it mirrors 31,713 as 31,311. But considering if the first prime is 1 or 2, they both represent 66 and 6. And then we have the Hebrew gematria. God is 31. Man is 311. Woman is 113. And 31,311 represents God and man. Yes. So the next question becomes, what is the beast? Do we have description of the beast? The beast is mentioned several times in the book, the Bible, a collection thereof. But in Revelation it's there 4 times, and there is indeed a description. And the description is the same in each of those 4 occurrences. It describes the beast as having 7 heads and 10 horns, and through Fibonacci and prime, this is indeed revealing. The 7th Fibonacci and the 10th prime, 13 and 29, string them together, 1,329. In very quick succession we can see how this can string together over to become that same number. So from this angle at least, the beast represents 31,311. But if we observe it through prime and prime alone, we have 17 and 29, which again takes us, as you can see, to the 215th prime, which could be considered to be the 216th. And this reflects my post on Da Vinci's Last Supper whenever I've mentioned it. It's the same thing. 215 has its own merit and reflects in reverse the 2 numbers of chapter and verse, Revelation 13:18, which incidentally can take us straight to that number again. Where else do you think it might be? Where else do you think? The positions of chapter and verse. We take the chapter and verse positions and string them, we have a very similar issue. And we can reverse them, as you can see here. Pause it and have a look. We can go further. So if we reflect on Revelation 13:18, we have the number of a man, we have the 666. But what about that name there? In Hebrew, without the vowels, we have 4 letters. They each represent an alphanumeric reference, as in the value. String them together in reverse order, and we have an exaction to that. We have an absolute exaction. It even tells us to place that 13 in the centre. So it's not just exact, it's absolutely perfect. But we can go further. We can. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 1. Twice over can render this through prime and Fibonacci. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Verse 2. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 2 does exactly the same thing twice over. So what do you make of that? It's pretty cool, isn't it? Genesis 1:1, 28 letters, 7 words, 2, 8 and 7. There's more to this here, and you will find that in my posts. But for now we're observing that one particular number, aren't we? And we can, indeed. Then we've got George and the Dragon, and that can be rendered in exactly the same fashion, only here we're doing it twice. Astonishing, isn't it? Can you just make this number from anything, do you suppose? If we could, we'd have spotted this years ago, wouldn't we? Let's go back to that Saturn square. Let's go back to it. And then apply that symbol there, and follow the numbers, and yet again we apply. This surely is no accident. You know, at the end of the day, what is the number of the beast? What is it? Because here, what we have is an absolution. So, indeed, let he that hath understanding count the number of the beast. I say this, let all that have understanding count this number and realize it. Because if you think of all these things that I've managed to list here that can comply to this right now, there's a lot more, I can assure you. I can more than assure you.